colds, flus, things like that. Sometimes people would come into us who would say, you know, I came down with this flu 10 years ago, and I feel like it never left me. I still feel the same way. You ever heard anybody say anything like that? Yeah. Well, guess what? Chances are they're exactly right. Chances are they still have that infection. It's still in their body even after all that time. Bacterial infections can smolder in the body long term. They can be there for years and years. And unless you find them, unless you know what to do and how to get rid of them, they can cause a lot of disease, a lot of illness for you. Fungal infections, mold. My father, for example, in World War II was in India, and he picked up this jungle rot in India, which is basically kind of a fungal type of infection that he would get between his toes. He had that for 50 years. We lived in Montana, and so there was only one time of the year where the temperature and the humidity was just right, apparently, for this thing to come out. But every year, at a certain month, certain time of the year, it would come out again and bother him, and then it would go away. And he would think, oh, for the first few years he thought, oh, that's gone now, when it would go away. Was it gone? No. It just kind of went dormant, and then it would come back again, see? So our bodies can be inhabited by things like this. This is the first kind of imbalance, and we'll talk more about this later. The next kind of imbalance is structural. Now, what does that mean? Well, as a chiropractor, my training is all about the structure of the body. And what we know is that the brain is a computer, and it controls the body by way of the nervous system. The nerves come down off of the spinal cord, they branch out and go to all the different organs in the body. There's a study done back in the 1920s by a doctor named Abraham Tobin, and in this study, what they did is they got a hold of, I think it was 132 bodies, people who had died from the failure of a major organ, like the heart or the liver or the kidneys and so on. And he and his medical colleagues autopsied the spines of all of these people who had died. And they were looking for the nerves that were the most atrophied. When a nerve becomes compressed, it will shrink and become sort of ribbon-like and atrophy. They were looking for the nerves that were the most damaged. And what they would do is when they would find the most atrophied, most damaged nerves coming off of the spine, leading to some organ, they would label those nerves, and then they would look up to see what did this person actually die from, and in about 99.8% of the cases, they found that the most damaged nerves actually led to the organ that had failed. See? As I recall, there were only 2 cases where it didn't match up. Isn't that interesting? So there's a correlation, you see, between alignment of our body and function of the organs and everything else. So that's what that's about. Nutritional deficiencies, this is another kind of imbalance that's very, very common. They did a study, Rutgers University did a study a few years ago. These researchers had a theory. They had heard that organic produce, organically grown vegetables and fruits, are actually better for you because they have higher mineral and higher, mainly mineral content than other vitamins or than other vegetables and fruits purchased at the market, right? Like you would typically buy. Things that are grown not organically but inorganically, I guess you'd say. So they got a whole bunch of vegetables, organic and non, and they compared them all, and the differences in many cases were absolutely astounding. In my opinion, it's very, very worth it to buy your produce organically, because otherwise you're just going to have to buy more vitamins and take those. Which brings us to toxicity, which is another kind of imbalance. Unfortunately, toxins now are worldwide. You can't go anywhere on Earth without finding toxins in the air and even in the water in most places in the world. One of the things that is really amazing to me is that the statistic is the average person in the United States takes in about 14 pounds of chemicals during the course of a year in the form of food additives and humectants and preservatives. Think about that. Now, if you were to sit down right now and try to eat 14 pounds of that sludge, you'd get really sick right away, right? What happens to us is we get real sick, but it takes a while because we're just gradually eating this stuff. And one of the interesting things about this is that our bodies are designed to deal with toxins to a degree. But the common saying is that we now get more toxic exposure just filling up our car with gas than our grandparents got in their whole entire lifetime. See? So this really is an enormous issue today. And one of the things that we have found is that the body, of course, although it's designed to break these toxins down and eliminate them, oftentimes, because it's overwhelmed with so much toxicity, it can't really do that. And so what happens is the body has a mechanism for coping with that, and it's called obesity. What happens is the body will take those excess toxins and it will shunt those toxins and put them into the fat cells of the body. And so the more toxins you have storing in the body, the more weight you'll have, the more fat tissue you'll have to buffer you and insulate you from those poisons, you see. Now, because of this, what typically happens to people who are carrying excess weight when they go on a quote-unquote diet, typically what happens is they'll starve themselves for a while, right? They'll lose some weight, but then what happens? They rebound usually afterwards, right? If they go off the diet, then they gain the weight right back, and they'll usually gain back a few extra pounds, right? We call that rebound. Why do you think that happens? I believe that happens because when you lose that weight, okay, you're losing some of your protection against the poisons in the body. So the relative concentration of toxin in the body goes up, and so your body panics as soon as you get off the starvation type diet and says, we got to put more fat in here because otherwise we're going to get really sick. And so more fat comes back. There is a way to detoxify the body, and there are a number of different ways. One of my favorites is actually isogenics. Raise your hand if you've heard of isogenics. Some people have heard of that. It's a great way to detoxify, and it's real simple. There are places you can go, like the Optimum Health Institute down in Austin, Texas, or in Lemon Grove, California, where they feed you all organically grown sprouts and things like that that put your body into an automatic sort of a cleansing mode. You can go there for a week, 2-3 weeks. So there are things that can be done. But from now on, when you see someone who is carrying excess weight, you can just realize in your mind that that is probably the reason. And that's what I have found to be the case. So let's take a look now at some other things. In your body, when you come here, okay, when you are born, you have an energy field within you that is very highly organized, okay? And this particular kind of imbalance relates to this part of your makeup. You can have imbalances in the organs and in the glands. You can think of every organ and every gland as having an electrical circuit or a fuse. If you overload any organ or gland, you can blow that circuit. One of the things we're going to talk about later on, too, is what we call spirit or physical disconnections, where the spirit that is within you becomes disconnected from the body. Now, if your spirit and your body become completely disconnected, we call that death. But you can become slightly imbalanced or slightly disconnected, and that creates illness. We'll talk about that more. Chakras are deep energy centers in the body, and I've joked for years that in Montana, where I'm from, they don't have chakras. But actually they do. And then the last kind of imbalance is from energies that have come from outside the body that are now in the body, that are now kind of imbalancing the body. The biggest one of these is what we call trapped emotions. And as we go through our lives, we're experiencing different emotions all the time, and sometimes we will hit peaks of emotion where we're feeling very frustrated, very angry, very depressed, very sad, whatever. And sometimes that peak emotion will create what we call a trapped emotion in the body. And one of the main reasons for this seminar is to teach you about trapped emotions, how to find them and how to get rid of them. Sometimes trapped emotions cluster around the heart. And when that happens, the subconscious mind will take that energy and create what we call a heart wall, which is a wall of energy around the heart that literally blocks your love from getting out and other people's love from getting in. And they've done some amazing research about the heart over the last few years. And what they found is that the heart is actually a second brain. It was back in the 1970s. They were doing some research and they discovered something that they'd missed before, and that is that the heart is actually filled with the same kind of nervous system tissue that the brain has. Okay, gray matter, white matter. Your heart has that too. And so that led to the creation of a whole new science that we call neurocardiology. Well, they've done some fascinating experiments with the heart. they found that the heart puts out anywhere from 60 to 1,000 times more energy, biomagnetic energy, than the brain does. They can measure now. They actually, they used to measure brain waves and heart waves with the electrocardiogram for the heart or the electroencephalogram machines for the brain, right? What they found, though, is that now they can measure the magnetic field of the heart and the brain, and it's much more accurate. And the magnetic field of the heart, they can measure anywhere on the body. And they can measure it outside of the bodies, outside your skin, anywhere out to about 3 feet. It's a holographic field that contains all the information